Live from Vancouver, Canada, it's theCUBE at OpenStack Summit Vancouver 2015. Brought to you by headline sponsors EMC and jointly by Red Hat and Cisco, with additional sponsorship by Brocade and HP. And now your hosts, John Furrier and Stu Miniman.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We are live in Vancouver, British Columbia for OpenStack Summit. This is SiliconANGLE Media's theCUBE, our flagship program. We go out to the events, extract the signal and noise. I'm John Furrier with my co-host Stu Miniman. Our next guest is a user, a customer of OpenStack, rolling it out. He's got scar tissue to prove it. Nick Gerasimatos.
That's correct.
Director of Engineering and Cloud Search at FICO. Welcome to theCUBE.
Thank you.
So we love talking with users, practitioners, because one, it's emerging, it's exciting, a lot of new stuff in there, but there's a lot of opportunities to create a lever of innovation.
Agreed.
Share your story. What you guys doing? What was the big picture? OpenStack, obviously private cloud initiative. Share a little bit about what the environment is, what you guys are doing, what was the business objective, and we can jump into it.
Okay, so traditionally FICO has always been a very on-premise provider. So we would always deploy hardware at a lot of tier one banks, financial institutions, government institutions, so on and so forth. And what we realized is that we were actually missing out on a very large segment, small, medium-sized businesses, financial institutions, and so on and so forth. So it was imperative for us to kind of embrace a cloud strategy. Not every single small, medium-sized business is going to actually want to invest in hardware in a data center and have the operations to actually support that design. So I think that's really what pushed us towards a web-centric model.
So talk about the challenges. What was the main reason why to go with OpenStack? Talk about the and the rationale behind it, and then what were the first couple steps you took?
Okay, so our legacy environment was based on VMware, a very VMware Cisco UCS centric environment, large, blocky. If you think of like vBlock and FlexPod and things along those lines, heavy investment up front, and then it trails off towards the end. What we needed to do was be a little bit more agile as we were going global, so that kind of pushed us to go towards the whole OpenStack design. Low point of entry, scalability, software-defined networking, software-defined storage, without having to pay the penalties.
Yeah, Nick, so can you walk us through a little bit, how many people were involved in this project, roughly size the budget if you can share that, how long it took, and, how many pieces along the stack did you need to change?
So we adopted it aggressively. Our CIO, Tony McGivern, essentially came to us and said that we needed to develop an OpenStack solution and implement it within a 12-month time frame from, start of nothing, bare bones, to actually a fully, functional solution. And that's both the infrastructure as a service component and the PaaS component as well. So it was a lot of work. It was fun, but it was also stressful. Having to validate different applications, different products on that same platform. And some of these applications and platforms were never actually even tested on a traditional legacy virtual environment. Big SAN, things along those lines. Okay,
so all in infrastructure and platform as a service. Talk to us a little bit about kind of before, blocky VMware, afterwards, your Red Hat customer using OpenShift, so what, was it new people running it or retraining? What's that transition look like?
So we brought in a kind of a core group of, I would consider them to be a SWAT team or a technical team, where we executed a lot of the vision when it comes to that. We looked at a lot of different distributions of OpenStack. We settled on Red Hat because we have a very strong relationship with them. We were actually one of the main customers that deployed OpenShift. And so we wanted to continue that. And I think it's been mutually beneficial, specifically because we're not just consumers, we partner with them heavily.
So I got to ask you, what was the biggest thing that you've learned that we could share with the folks out there watching? Because everyone is going down, a lot of new people coming into the journey of OpenStack. The sessions are packed. There's a lot of great technical stuff, Red Hat, Cisco, everyone's got this good stuff going on. What's the magnified learnings? If you can walk away and give 3 pieces of advice. What to stay away from, what to double down on, what did you guys learn?
So one thing we did learn very early on was that Ceph, while it's a great platform for software-defined storage, it doesn't necessarily fit all of our needs. Applications that are very latency sensitive or I/O sensitive, lots of transactional stuff. We realized pretty early on that Ceph wasn't going to provide the performance that we needed for that. So we brought in SolidFire from that design perspective to guarantee SLAs, guarantee performance. There's other reasons why we brought them in as well. The other thing we learned pretty quickly was that Neutron, at least in the older versions of OpenStack, was not quite ready for production. So that was something we had to learn through very quickly. And then the upgrade cycle.
So I'm sorry, just to poke on that. So what did you do since Neutron wasn't quite ready for your production environment?
Well, we looked at Open Daylight, we looked at other different SDNs. The end solution is we did go with Neutron for our design, but we also, aggressively moved from OpenStack version, 5 to 6, and we're also preparing right now to go to version 7. Neutron's grown a lot in the last couple of years. It's definitely much more stable than it was in OSP4.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw taking some of the ODL pieces and moving them into Neutron. So, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your peers as to when putting things together? That SWAT team work well for you? How was the politics internally as to managing some of that? Is always you see you laugh. The technology has its challenges that we're all overcoming, but some of the internal pieces.
It's tough. Our operations team struggled initially to get their head wrapped around the distributed scale-out design. Finding qualified engineers who have a lot of OpenStack experience, that's also very difficult in the industry right now.
Yeah, personnel is hard. I mean, people are learning as they go along. It's cutting edge.
We're all learning as we go along with it. We're learning from the architecture, components, the containerization that's going on, and everything is growing so rapidly. You either have to embrace the technology or the technology is just going to supersede you.
Yeah, we were just talking with Red Hat's SVP, and one of the things we were talking about is that there's an engineering mindset going on, which is fun and intoxicating at the same time. It's like all the new stuff, and there's some really mission critical stuff on the table that you can work on. So it's a lot of meaty things if you're into that build out mode. So it's appealing on one end. But a lot of this stuff's been around for a while. I mean, we've released web services, and we've heard SAML on the camp, heard that decade old. This stuff's now prime time, and it's baked out. So there's some historical geekness involved around service architectures. So does that give the balance? Does that help
I think
people
so.
walk the tight wire with a net a little bit? Or, I mean...
I think so. I mean, if we think of, the first containers that were around was like Solaris zones, right? I mean, that was kind of the first containerization technology that was heavily used and adopted by user bases. But then a lot of the tools weren't ready for prime time. Now that I think we're seeing a lot of with Docker, with Swarm, OpenShift tying into CloudForms, for single pane of glass and API extraction, I think we're actually seeing the birth of a new generation. I know Canonical announced on Monday the new LuxD containerization, and the density that they were getting from that was pretty impressive. But we use OpenShift primarily, and we've been very happy with it. And the orchestration of how it's building into CloudForms, I think, is really going to unlock a lot of management and orchestration and automation that we've been trying to build.
Workflow management is a huge deal. Don't you see that as an opportunity, this new generation?
Absolutely,
Dashboard-based IT.
It is. And we're moving heavily away from like the traditional administrator for the most part. We're moving more towards the DevOps kind of person.
Air traffic control for services, right? I mean, that's more like...
Absolutely. No one working the ground anymore. Everything's moving in towards an automated way. All of our deployments are automated, so when we stand up a new cloud, regardless of the availability zone or region, it's all done through automation. So it's repeatable. We can guarantee the design. We can guarantee the versioning.
Final question for you, Nick. What is out in the landscape as you look forward with this, the journey you're on? You got a couple great accomplishments under your belt with OpenStack. You're moving forward. What do you see out there that gets you excited? I mean, what technology you say that's going to be a lever of change? That's certainly the next generation. What can you point to saying I'm excited about those technologies?
So I think the most excited thing I was about, that I heard of today was, or actually I should say on Monday, was the Keystone integration. So Keystone right now, we have to run multiple versions of Keystone for each geolocation. Having it actually all integrated is going to be definitely a huge help for us. FICO, we do a lot of security, compliancy, big data analytics. So we take security very seriously, and that's going to actually help us and simplify things.
Yeah. So Nick, I got the last question for you on this is, your CIO, gave you an edict to really go out there, be bleeding edge, break some glass out there. How do you give advice to people out there to say, it's okay to do this? I mean, you guys work in an industry where things gotta work. It's not like little sideline things there. Traditional kind of enterprise workloads that must stay up and running. Why is it okay to kind of push the edge and be bleeding edge?
Well, I think that everyone's kind of leaning towards that direction, regardless. I mean, if you look at traditional companies like VMware, they're also embracing containerization. Every major company, even including Microsoft, is embracing containers and the new scale-out design architecture. So I would say that don't be afraid. Embrace it. It's one of those things. We're moving towards distributed architectures. There's no longer these large blocks in traditional IT. We're moving towards scalable applications. If you look at the amount of data that's being consumed and used nowadays, it's definitely moving towards a web-centric model.
Nick, we really appreciate you sharing your insights and experience here on theCUBE, here at the OpenStack Summit. Really appreciate it. This is theCUBE, bringing you all the action from the practitioners, people building OpenStack. A lot of in production, a lot of stuff happening here on the ground. We'll be right back after this short break with more coverage. Day 2 of OpenStack Summit. I'm John Furrier, Stu Miniman. We'll be right back.